Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. For those of you that are regular listeners, thank you for jumping on again. For those of you that are first-time listeners, welcome, and hopefully you enjoy our conversation today. Tane can't join us today. He apologizes because he is training somebody on some crazy machinery on a vineyard in Blenheim. So I don't know what that's all about, but it sounds like it's pretty crazy fun. So he apologizes. So just have me today, me and my voice. And as you know, at the start, we like to talk about what we've learned in the last week. This week has been a pretty special week for myself because I was privileged to go to a number of graduation ceremonies at that time of the year, and just sitting back and reflecting, listening to young people and their journeys as they graduate. When I go to the Maori pre-grads, which are really just beautiful, you get the sense of how study and education is regarded as a privilege for some families, some whānau, and it's a whole family experience, not just a one person journey. And sometimes we forget about that. When you go to university or tertiary, whatever it is, it's not just you, but it's a whole background of community that are there to back you. And hopefully you go back and you give back to them. But also, what was really powerful about this week was, for those of you that don't live in New Zealand, there's a bit of a interesting perspective with the government at the moment in terms of their view on te reo Māori and Māori practices, and just listening to these amazing Māori graduates who are just challenging the narrative of the government about why te reo and Māoridom is really a really integral part of New Zealand society. And so it's really beautiful listening to all the reo that was being spoken, all the tikanga, and as someone that is an immigrant to New Zealand, it's really beautiful to think about and reflect about my time and what I should be doing as well in that space there. So yeah, that's my piece of knowledge to put into my basket as I go forward. But this is not a monologue, so I am going to stop talking. And as you know, for regular listeners, we love to scour the country, scour the world for people that we think we're amazing. And as always, we think everyone is amazing, but we don't get funding for this podcast, so we can't get everyone on here. But the people we get on here, we think are fantastic. And I am really privileged, honored, and excited to invite our podcast guest this week, Anne, who is coming to us from Malaysia. Kia ora, Anne. Welcome to our podcast.
Kia ora.
Beautiful, man. And do you want to tell our listeners a bit about who you are and where you are at this moment in life?
Well, actually, it was really great to hear you speak about graduation because I've recently just come from one myself, just about a month ago. I'm from the UK, so I've been through a couple of moves the past few years, and that's why I'm back in Malaysia at the moment. But I grew up in Malaysia. It's where I'm from, and I did my high school there. I was in Otago to do my 2 degrees in law and arts. And then I stayed on in Wellington to work first as a corporate lawyer and then as a policy advisor for the New Zealand Police before doing my master's, and now embarking on an international-ish career. That's me in a short nutshell.
Oh, beautiful. That's a very humble, short nutshell, and we'll start right from the beginning. And so, growing up in Malaysia, it is a very crazy, cool, culturally diverse place, but also comes with its pros and cons. But was it like, were you coming from a place where the food is amazing, there's crazy amounts of noise, and there's all this liveliness to Dunedin?
Well, I mean, since you mentioned the food, I was going to talk about the food anyway. I've got a one-track mind for food. But I suppose the biggest difference moving from Malaysia to a small, humble town, Dunedin, was just, I suppose, the people and the student life. In Malaysia, everything's happening at once. There's all these public holidays where everyone's celebrating, different cultural events and different things, and you're always having like a public holiday. And then when you come to Dunedin, it's much smaller, it's more compact, and you have to get used to going to a university. You have to get used to mingling with people who you, I suppose, never grew up with. And I think I remember being a bit being a bit confused as to what the culture was. I was trying to fit in and I was trying to make friends, and I found it difficult at first. I actually came to Dunedin as a 17-year-old. So
Oh
I didn't
wow.
start in Dunedin as a first year student. I started as a foundation in art student at a
Oh
foundation
wow.
center,
Yeah.
which was a little bit, I suppose, unconventional. And I wasn't old enough to really rent yet because I was 17. And so I was staying with a host family, and that helped, to be honest. That helped having some sort of a structure and a sort of a family life to help me ease into the life at Dunedin was great. And then I got to first year, and then I tried to figure out what the students were doing and how it was like to be the cool kids. And I was 18. High school wasn't that far away ago, and I was trying to be cool. And this was back in the day when we still had couch burnings going on. So I remember looking at a burning couch and thinking like, oh, is this Kiwi culture?
Yeah.
Turned out it wasn't a Otago culture, not really so much of a Kiwi one, but it was a transition, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
that's crazy because I think I came around the same time and I was blown away by when I went to I think a cricket game or rugby game at the Carriageford, which is still standing, and there was couches burning. And I was like, this is really strange. Why are people doing this here?
You and me both. And
Yeah,
I started thinking like maybe I should I stop burning couches to be cool? And I'm glad I didn't get into any of that.
yeah, crazy. But let's go back a little bit. Why
Mhm.
why New Zealand? Why Dunedin? I mean, you as a 17-year-old especially, because as you know, those are your formative ages in your life. Why did your parents decide that, hey, this little place in the middle of nowhere is a good place for you to go to?
Well, I think I need to talk about my parents' backgrounds as well, if we talk
Sure.
about New Zealand as a whole,
Yeah.
because my mom actually studied in New Zealand in the 80s. Not in Dunedin, though. She studied in Victoria. So why she
Yes.
didn't decide to put me in Victoria is a good question. But I think she really enjoyed the city of Dunedin. She enjoyed how much it was a student town, and she thought it was a great compact place for us to pursue our studies. And when I say us, I mean my brother and my sister as well. So there's three of us in the family. I'm the youngest. My sister and brother were actually in Dunedin way, way before I was. And my
Oh wow.
sister was in the medical school. So she was doing great. She, graduated from medicine, and my mom just thought, yeah, that's cool. All three of you can go there. So that was that. Yeah.
Oh wow, crazy. So I guess it's a family legacy, to come down to well, study in New Zealand. And I guess
Yeah.
was it helpful that your sister was here at the time, or had she finished up by that time?
She had finished up at that time, and so had my brother, and
And
so
they're like,
I
see you
came
later.
pretty much by myself. Yeah, I
See
think
you
my
later.
mom. I should probably say that my parents visited a couple of residential colleges, and they really liked it. They liked how close it was to classes, and I think that was the biggest influencing factor for them. They wanted us to be able to get to class and to focus on our studies. And in my parents' words, Auckland has too many distractions. So there you go.
Yeah, crazy. And you ended up living at St. Margaret's College, is that correct? Or did you?
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. Crazy story. Thinking about Malaysia. I had never met a Malaysian in my life before. I grew up in Zimbabwe. I did everything in Zimbabwe, went to university in South Africa with my first degree. And the very, very first person I met when I came to New Zealand was I was waiting in line at the dining hall to get some food. And the two people next to me, I was like, they were speaking this crazy English. And I was like, what is this? Like, ayo, la, la, ayo, la. And I was like, what is going on here? And they were the first people I met when I first got to New Zealand. And they were both from Malaysia. And yeah, we've been friends for the last 20 odd years. So it's pretty crazy how the world comes to university, which is pretty crazy, and I guess the same for you. Hopefully the same for you as you started navigating your coolness and not burning couches.
Oh, I mean, to be completely honest, I wouldn't say I made like a really core solid group of friends for the first couple of years of my uni life.
Yep.
Law was a pretty demanding degree in itself, and my focus was getting into second year. And I don't know how much our listeners know about the process, but it's essentially, uh, they essentially only take like the top 200 students out of 600. I don't know if that's still the case. And I coming from Malaysia and not having been through the New Zealand education system growing up, I was really conscious that maybe I wasn't good enough to enter second year. I had this deep burning fear that somehow I was lacking or inadequate in some way. And so a lot of my energy just went into studying. And so for the first few years, I was not cool. there was nothing. There was nothing conventionally teenage cool about me. I wasn't drinking and I wasn't really partying for the first few years.
But that's okay, right? That's what you had a goal when you came here, and as you said, it's pretty challenging to get into law school. Yeah, same thing when I went to university. So my parents were like, "Hey, you got to knuckle down." So none of that happened in my life as well. No drinking, a bit of partying, but no drinking. And then it's crazy. But and why law? Why you come from Malaysia? Was law something that's always been a big part of your to get you going, or did you come to New Zealand and go, actually, wait a minute, law is something I want to investigate?
I was really interested in subjects and careers that really utilize language and critical thinking.
Yes.
Did I grow up wanting to be a lawyer? No. I mean, I grew up not knowing about a lot of things, and everything that has unfolded up until this point has been, quite unanticipated, I would say. I was interested in world politics, and I was interested in what was going on around the world, which was why I did a Bachelor of Arts in Politics. And law was really something that I decided to take a first year paper in. I undertook the degree. I did a first year paper thinking that it would be good general knowledge no matter what I decided to do with it. I didn't know if I was going to end up entering second year. So I really had no clue what was going to happen. But I found that as I did first year, I really enjoyed the papers. I enjoyed the critical thinking aspect of it. I enjoyed learning about how the world worked and how legal systems influenced it. So I got into second year and I carried through. It wasn't always an easy process. And I can say this out loud now. There was a time where I almost failed an assignment in second year. There were some dire times, and I did question myself a couple of times whether finishing was never the question once I entered the program. Yes. I was always going to knuckle down and finish it. But I questioned what I was going to do with it. I questioned where my direction was going. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's so. Yeah. I mean, it's so true because a lot of us, a lot of young people as well. We start something. We have no idea what we're doing, and when you get into it, you go, right, cool. I'm going to finish this. It's a bit like myself, yes. And we have very similar parallels. When I did my degree, I had no idea what I was doing. I was there just because it seemed to be the right thing to do at that time. And like you, I knew I'd finish my degree, but when I was doing my degree, I was like, what am I going to do with this? Why am I doing this here? And it was really quite challenging and quite confronting because I knew I could finish it, but what's the next stage? And that's a whole different story for another day. But I love the honesty there because second year law school is pretty challenging. I think some people tell me it's the hardest year of law at Otago University.
I have some stories, and I have some trauma stories which I still remember till this day. I remember being unable to really keep up with lectures. We were having some quite content heavy lectures which required like plenty of reading beforehand, and I couldn't really keep up with the volume that was just getting thrown at us like week by week. And then all at the back of your mind, you've just got this pressure, knowing that everything's going to rest on like 4 big exams at the end of the year, and then you start spiraling. I mean, I was spiraling. Yeah. And then the more I spiraled, the more I struggled. There was a point in time where I think I was about 80 or 90 lectures behind. That's how bad it was. Yeah. It was great. I can talk about this freely now because I've passed the process, but it was hard. It was really hard.
But I think it's important just to speak about it because we have people like that they get into law school and they think it's all cruisy and all hunky dory. But I think like any profession, any degree that you do, you have it's going to be challenging, depending on how it is. But also what you mentioned there was really quite important. When you start spiraling, you just keep spiraling. This is what happens. We don't realize it until sometimes it's too late. I see lots of young people that when they don't reach out, it's too late. I actually had a Zoom call with a young man yesterday who was meant to finish his degree in now, actually, but he started spiraling and he just went off the wagon and he failed 2 of his papers, which should have meant he would have finished his degree this year, but he didn't reach out for help. But it's really hard. It's easy for me to say standing on the outside and for you to speak, now, but during that process, it's really quite challenging, isn't it?
It's hard, and I think I don't know how it's like for different people or their families or the way they've been brought up or the culture, student culture around them, but certainly I grew up in quite a high performing household, and there was always that pressure to follow through. And I didn't want to admit to anyone really that I was struggling. I feared that there would be shame in it. I feared that I would be perceived as not good enough, and I always had this burning desire to prove to people that I could do something once I set my mind to it. So there was a sense of pride, but there was also a sense of fear. I fear of being judged. So sometimes it's hard to ask for help.
It is hard, human nature makes it really hard, especially like you said before, depending on the construct and the constraints you've been brought up in, where asking for help is sometimes seen as failure, whereas in some cultures asking for help is amazing. So it's really hard, and everyone, as you said, has a different journey and a different story with that question about asking for help. So, and there's no right or wrong, it's just the way humans are, sadly.
Completely. And but I think if there's one thing that I've learned from all these years, it's that if you don't ask for help, no one's going to give it to you. People can't mind read. People don't know what's going on in their life. You need to be able to reach out and ask, and it takes bravery. It takes courage. It takes bravery. But once you've asked for that help, and once it comes to you, no matter what form it might be, you sit back and you think, God, why didn't I do this earlier? This would have been so much easier if I just asked. So you don't know what kind of help can be offered to you as well if you don't ask for it. And that itself is a learning process.
100%. And one thing that I have reflected on my last few years is when I speak to young people myself as well, is sometimes you don't have to wait till you're in trouble. You can just ask from day one. You just say, hey, whoever your manager, your supervisor, your boss, that, hey, this is amazing. And then when things get bad and you go, this is really challenging, they go, oh, wait a minute, this is very unusual for Prajesh or for Anne to say this is challenging. I need to come in and, so it's not, don't wait till it's too bad, just start the conversation well before. But again, it's easy to say now as you're much older, but as a young 17-year-old, it's a very different story altogether.
You learn as you go.
That's right, exactly. Hopefully, fingers crossed. What is life in a college for you, in a residential college? Was that quite a good experience for you, or were you just focused on your studies, so you just head down, get it done?
It was a great experience, and it was great to the point where I decided to stay for second year, because St. Margaret's allowed that for us at that stage. I don't know if that still is the case, but I enjoyed having an environment where people were around me doing different sorts of activities all the time. I think the only challenge I had being at St. Margaret's was that most of the students there were doing health sciences, and we probably had about 5 or 6 people who were doing first year law. So we had this sort of pretty tight-knit-ish community that struggled together and learned things together. But beyond that, the conversation was always about health sciences. So we did feel a little bit like a minority. But by far and large, it was good. We had formal dinners, so that was nice. We always had access to really cool speakers who came to speak about their lives, and it almost was sort of like a training ground for some of the things we would be doing later, like being able to communicate with people, who've had a completely different life experience to you, being able to socialize and network for professional purposes. Those are all things that I felt like I learned a bit more in my first year at St. Margaret's.
Yes, it's great. It's pretty priceless, right? Living in the colleges as a whole. So it's the skills that you learn once you go. I don't need to live. I'm just going there for a room and some food, but actually it's a lot more than that there, which is.
Oh, I mean that helps. The having someone cook food for you really helps. Yeah.
And washing and washing your dishes, right? This is great.
Yeah. And being 3 minutes away from a lecture theatre. Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Life is awesome. So, and let's fast forward. So you do law, you do your politics as well. You finish up, which would have been a pretty amazing moment for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're out in the working world. Did you get a job quite easily, or was it a struggle for you? Your first job, I guess.
I was doing this thing where I was trying to strategize my future as much as I could. So, so I decided to see if I could get an internship, which would help me land a graduate job eventually. And that's what I did. And remember how I talked about how I was almost failing law at second year?
Yes.
That didn't happen. I instead got a letter saying that, oh, you were in the top 20% and you were close to entering honors, but you're not good enough to enter honors yet, but you can apply again next year. And I saw that and I was like, bro, now I got to get into the honors program. I gotta put in so much hard to get into the honors program because that will help me get an internship. And it sounds rather, it might sound a bit cliche, but that's exactly what I did. I got into the honors program and then really capitalized on that while doing a bunch of volunteer work on the side so that I could get enough skills and experience and academic credentials to get into an internship program with a law firm. So that again was a hectic process because we've got this internship application season where you're just sitting out, churning out like cover letters, and you don't even really know how to write a cover letter because you're in your second year of uni, and no one's telling you how. So I think I sent out about 14 or 15 cover letters in that 1 week, and then I started getting the interviews, and then got accepted into one law firm who was taking on interns. And after that summer, they offered me a graduate, like a graduate law position, legal graduate. I can't even remember what it's called. They offered me one of those graduate positions, and I said, "Hell yeah, that is great. I will take that up." I knew it wasn't something I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Yep.
But I really needed to start somewhere, and that's where I decided to start.
And what's really beautiful there is that you said you strategize. You have to strategize, right? Especially in a professional field. If you're competing with other people, that you go, oh, wait a minute, if I need to get places somewhere, I've got to start volunteering. I've got to start doing the other things that are going to let me just stand up just a little bit. Sometimes it sounds like people go, oh, it's pretty selfish, but it's actually selfless because when you get there, then you can actually make some change later on, which, as we'll talk about in a bit, is what you ended up doing and the stuff and the cool things that you do. So, I mean, again, it's also testament to your hard work as well. Nothing just comes easy. So even though you thought you were failing and being the top 20%, which is really cool, a testament to your hard work. And what is it like? So you finish up in Dunedin and then you move to Wellington for your law practice. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And how was that? How was that experience for you? Going from because I always find this funny. Like university trains you for all these things, and then you go to your first job and you go, I know nothing.
Yeah.
You feel like
I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing. I didn't even know how to draft like a proper like work appropriate like professional email. I was constantly second guessing myself. I mean, one of the greatest things about being in that corporate law firm was that they were going to sponsor my my admission to the bar. So they sponsored my legal course, and they offered me the training opportunities that I needed. They rotated me around different teams, and I wanted that exposure. And I was one of those people who thought, I'm not going to do this forever, but at least I can say that I've done that, and I can say why I don't like it, right? Yes. I knew some friends who were kicking that option right out of the door because they said like, oh, I'll never work for a big corporate, and it's like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I still want to try it anyway.
Yeah.
And so I had to adapt. The move itself was fine. I was with friends and I was with people who I knew. That was all fine. But learning how to work, I guess 8 hours a day was a challenge. I didn't realize how tiring it would be. I still remember that, I was constantly exhausted. When you're at work, you're on the go all the time. You're constantly focusing. You're trying to absorb different things at once. You're trying to, be the best version of yourself. It was exhausting.
Yeah, and it's all day every day, right? All day every day.
It's all day every day. It's all day every day. And as a graduate, it's not really a big secret that sometimes you have to pull in extra hours over the weekend. And I had to do that a couple of times. I wouldn't say it was the biggest. I wouldn't say that I had it worse than other people, because people always say things like, "Oh my God, corporate, grad, you must be overworked all the time." It's like there were times like that. There were also times that weren't like that.
Yeah.
But I did that for about 2 years, and then decided to switch.
And what is your biggest learning in that time there? So you knew. So I love that because you're like, cool, this is not what I really want to do forever, but I'm here. And I always tell people, like, you can't say no to something you haven't tried. If you can't say I don't like something if I've never tried it, because you never know. So and that is a mindset shift I had to make as well. You go, oh, I don't like that, but how do you know? You've never tried it before. And you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to go, but once you give it a go, then you can have your opinion about it.
My mom teaches me this concept, in which she says that nothing you learn is ever wasted. And I've applied that consistently through my life, and I still do until this day. So I think my biggest takeaway from that process, three things: you've got the hard skills, you've got the soft skills, and you've got the things that you learn about yourself. The hard skills are obviously the more technical ones, like job specific stuff, legal skills. The soft skills, the skills you get from talking to people, meeting clients, being able to work together in a team, which you might not get often in university, depending on what you're doing. And then the things that you learn about yourself. What is it that you like? What is it that you don't like? What are your boundaries? What are your bottom lines? So what can't you stand no matter what? And I would say those are the three categories of things that you learn.
And it's so true. And it's so true. Each kind of role teaches you those different things about you. And I love the last one, because learning about yourself is, you think when you finish up university, yes, I know everything about myself, but actually you know nothing. You've been living in this world that is so fake. Now you go, okay, wait a minute, this now becomes real. And then you join the police. What is that like? That's the New Zealand police, who sound like a pretty fun place to work at.
Fun place, yeah, I suppose so. I
use the word fun like this here.
pretty fun at times, can be pretty challenging at times, challenging in a way that's different from corporate law.
Yes.
So I'm just going to step back 2 steps and talk about my undergraduate law honors dissertation, which was on firearms.
Yes.
Firearms and gangs.
I had that down. Yes.
So I already had a subject matter interest, I suppose.
Yes.
But the real motivating factor, which I still write in my cover letters these days, is the Christchurch shootings that happened in 2019. Now, we know what happened after the shootings. We know some of the law changes that came through, and there was a big focus on firearms for a long time, and there still is today. But after that happened, I thought, damn, I need to, I've got a calling, I've got an itch to do something. And so I started looking at policy roles. I wasn't looking at police specifically, because they were going through like a big hiring process, and they were, from what I knew, there was a lot going on, and they were hiring people who really had policy experience, and I didn't really have that in the first place. So I was applying for policy roles in government, and a lot of that was motivated by the fact that I wanted to change.
Yes.
And also from the fact that this had happened in New Zealand.
Can I ask you a question? Was your thesis
sure.
Was your thesis pre or post the shooting? Pre. Oh well, so wow. So what was the motivation to that topic there? That's a very interesting topic, especially in New Zealand, where nothing has happened since pre-mosque shooting.
That was a struggle because I chose a dissertation topic, and my friends were all kind of like, oh, cool. And I wanted to say, like, this isn't just cool, this is important. You know how it's like when you're researching, you've got a topic you like, and you just want to tell everyone about it, and no one wants to listen. But I remember doing the initial research for the dissertation and finding very little material to work with in New Zealand. Yes. Which I suppose is a good thing, because you want to, we're obviously not a country that has an extensive history of gun violence. I mean, again, this is 2017, right? 2017. We've had a couple of incidents, but some of it was historical in the 1980s, whatever. Yes. And people were kind of saying like, oh, we don't really have a problem. And I was like, it depends how you look at it. So I guess my motivating factor was that I was interested in how tools, or, I wouldn't use the word weapons, because it really depends on the context of the tools, how tools can be used to shape society, and how tools contribute to power, and how power can be used to, influence society dynamics. And I was thinking a lot, of course, about America.
Yes.
And so I wanted to see how that was like in a New Zealand context, and I latched onto like a 2017 Parliament inquiry, and that was it. That was really it.
Oh, crazy! And how I say the word crazy, but what a coincidence! Then obviously the mosque shooting happened, and you. I mean, this is terrible to say, but you were like a thought leader before it even happened, and go, wait a minute, this is crazy. And then, so did that help you when you go to the police policy advising role? Was that something that was big for you, or as I've been reading more about you, doing the research, I see things like DNA and policing that all became really, really part of your passion.
I mean, a lot of that was also dependent on the work that they had going on.
Yes, totally.
I didn't have a lot of control over what, what kind of work I could pick and choose. But basically, even though my interest was in firearms, they had an opening in the criminal justice policy space, and they said, we can give you a role, like a temporary role for 9 months. It was as an assistant policy advisor role, and it was going to be a shift from my stable law role to something that was temporary. And they said,
Yep.
this is what we can offer you. And I said, hell yeah, this is great. I'll take the chance. And even though it was only going to be temporary, I decided to take it on and decided to work in a space that I wasn't quite as familiar with. So I wasn't as familiar with the criminal justice system in New Zealand. I had done some of the standard law papers, but I hadn't specialized in it.
Yep.
So the subject matter was quite different, but I really enjoyed it.
Oh, beauty. And then, so as you started working in that space there, what are some of the things that you were really passionate about as you got to, firearms was your thing, but as you said, as you start getting these little projects, you start getting a glimpse of the world in a very different way. And what things as you said before, you learn about yourself, you learn about things that you enjoy and don't enjoy. Was there some areas that you're like, whoa, the world is a bit crazy in this space here? Let me explore this a bit more.
I really enjoyed anything that was relevant to how policing interacted with community. I found that the perceptions of police were really different depending on who I spoke to. I got, I do a lot of travel and backpacking as well. And so when I speak to people, sometimes I get all sorts of reactions to what I do. I get, the real conspiracy kinds who are just, oh my God, the bad government, bad police, bad. Which, if you talk to them, you can understand where they're coming from as well.
Totally.
To the standard, like civil service workers who go, oh, okay, cool. This is a role. This is cool. So I really wanted to explore that dynamic more. And so I got to work on things like, prison policies, one or two aspects of community policing. Some of the stuff that I worked on was a bit more niche, like DNA, the child sex offender register. Some of it was a bit more controversial, all sorts. DNA had a strong relation with, the community as well. But I would say
do you want to tell us about that? Just about the DNA
Yeah, sure. So there was a law commissioner report that was being prepared on the use of DNA in policing. So that goes from everything from like storage to retention to how it's collected. And so there were a lot of police relevant aspects to that. And so the law commission was consulting us on those particular aspects. And so a lot of my role was going around to different stakeholders within police, talking to them about it and getting their views and feedback, and then passing them on to the law commission through a series of meetings. And obviously I didn't do that alone. I was always with the guidance of a senior policy with my team, other experts who were, some of them were the ones doing the actual forensic science. And that was interesting because they had a very science-heavy view of things, and I had a policy view of things, and so we had to talk together and collaborate, and come up with a view that was consistent, in which we could put back to the law commission. And the law commissioner at that time, who was working on the project, was Donna Buckingham, who was at the law faculty when I was a student. So she knew who I was, and I knew who she was. And when we first met, it was like, oh, Donna. So that was great. A very fascinating project. I haven't really kept up to date with the project since I left New Zealand, and I'm not really sure where it's at this point in time. I think the results were going to be tabled in Parliament, and I don't know if that happened.
Oh, well, but it's great to be part of that process as it got started when you were involved in it, which is all these things take time, but they've got to start somewhere. And it's pretty awesome that you got in there at the start. One of the cool things I've also read about is that you were when you were working at the police, you were also a patroller with the community patrols. That would have been an interesting part of your interesting role that you took on.
Very, very interesting. And I mean, the main motivation for me doing that was because I felt like I was doing policy in an office without having much engagement on the ground at all. And it wasn't like I could just hop on a police car and go on a patrol, and I had to do it some other way. And so the next best or the next closest thing I could find to frontline experience that was relevant to my policy role was community patrols. The process, I mean, I got in touch and I attended some meetings, and then I fill out some forms, and I had to go through a couple of, like training patrols with the lead guy who was doing it before I could, become like a fully fledged member. It was interesting. There were times where I got a little bit scared. And when I say scared, I don't mean scared of the people. I mean scared of, driving around like some of the, exposed areas in Wellington at night. Sometimes it gets really windy, and we would just be on this huge car, and the wind would be blowing onto us, and the roads are narrow. I was scared about things like that. But we saw a bunch of different things. We saw boy racers. We saw we never saw anything that was too dangerous, I would say. The things we saw were more things that people would consider a nuisance. But it was our role to, like liaise with the police, liaise with the council on anything that needed to be brought to attention. So there was a lot of skills that you could get, which is like operating in real time and having to act under pressure and decision making at that moment. And I think it gave me a bit of perspective as to how it was like to operate on frontline conditions when you have to make like split-second decisions.
Yeah, and how long did you do that for? I mean, how often were you on community patrol? Was it every day, every 2 weeks, every?
Once a month.
Okay.
And the reason why I couldn't do it more often was because the patrols ran from 7:30 p.m. to 2 a.m., sometimes to 3 or 4 a.m.
Yep.
And I was working full time, and I found it quite tiring if I were to do it a bit too much. So once per month was the minimum.
Yes.
So I did it once per month and attended their monthly meetings as well. We would share information and collaborate with other patrollers, members from the police. As to how long I did it for, a couple of years.
Yep.
Like 2.
Awesome.
I can't really remember. Yeah.
Yeah, but and I think as I was reading about you as well, you were recognized by the city council and the police in 2020. That would have been quite nice when they awarded you a certificate of appreciation.
It was a fairly straightforward thing. It was just something that was recognizing my volunteer record.
Yeah, but it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice, though, right, to get that. Someone to appreciate it.
It's nice. It's nice. Yeah. Every time I get discouraged about my life, I look at it just to remind myself that there's something important to my heart which I can hold on to. It was something unexpected. Yeah, it was a volunteer record. It came actually from Camera Base, because Camera Base was something that I was interested in doing before community patrols.
Yes.
They ended up swapping those roles out for paid roles from the council, so it wasn't a volunteer thing anymore. And so they, I got the certificate of appreciation for that. I don't think I wouldn't say that I did anything magnificent. Didn't solve any cool cases. Wasn't a detective.
Well, that's not for you to decide, right? It's the other people. We think you're pretty awesome, and that's the important thing, right? When others think you're pretty awesome. And then you left New Zealand. Well, and then you headed back home. Was that correct? Is that correct? After your time in New Zealand with the police?
Yeah. So there was a point in time during COVID I was really struggling as to what I wanted to do next and how I wanted to continue developing. I really, really enjoyed my role in the New Zealand police, but I wanted to see what other people were doing in the world, and I wanted to see how problem solving was carried out in different regions of the world. And so I had this thought. I was like, I'm gonna do some further study, and there was another motivation for that. I wanted to eventually see if I could get into international organizations, but for places like the UN, they do ask for a master's degree, some sort of postgraduate qualification, and the postgraduate qualification actually stands for 2 years of work experience. So there was some value in me getting that, and so I started doing a bit of research, and I tossed up whether I wanted to do like a master's of law, or whether I wanted to do something like public policy. And when the statement writing came a lot easier for public policy, I knew that was the one that I should get into. I threw out 2 applications. I applied for Oxford and I applied for Cambridge. and I got accepted into both.
Beautiful.
And then I decided to go to Oxford to do my master's, which in itself was, my God, another another whole story that I can get into. And that's what my recent graduation was. It was from my master's at Oxford. Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations. First of all, well done getting in. Secondly, congratulations on finishing the journey. But maybe a bit of a glimpse into the story, the crazy story of that the journey, if you have some time to talk about that.
Yeah, sure, of course. A lot of it was not glamorous. I was staying up till really late at night doing my personal statements, and in addition, they wanted like a piece of policy work, some kind of written work, as part of the application. Because I wasn't born in New Zealand, I had to do an IELTS English test, which I just thought was an absolute waste of my time and money, but I had to do it anyway. So there were a lot of bureaucratic aspects which I couldn't get away from. I had to do all the research, and a lot of that was done during COVID. So, I was spending all my days being at home, working from home. And then after work, I would have dinner and then go back to my laptop. And that was the time. I was also, another big part of my life is running. So I do a lot of running, and I was training for my next big goal of an ultra marathon that was somehow still happening, despite the COVID restrictions. And so I was playing off these two roles against each other. I was like, during my ultra marathon training, I would think about applying for these unis, and then while I was applying for these unis, I would say, like, okay, I'm just gonna do a run and get it all out afterwards. So I was really just hanging on for a lot of it. A lot of coffee, a lot of sending things off to people and saying, please, can you just look at this for me? Thank you for your time. And your feedback is much appreciated. So there was a lot of that, and then a lot of waiting.
Yeah, I can imagine. Bit of a sidetrack. Tell us about the ultramarathon. Did you end up doing it?
I did. Yeah. It was one that was at Hawke's Bay, 52 kilometers. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. And how did you feel when you accomplished it?
Pretty damn tired, because it took almost a whole day.
I'm seeing the word tired appear quite a bit here, Anne, in this conversation.
Yeah. It's oh man, the tiredness is the theme of, it's the theme of. I wish it wouldn't always have to be that way, but there was tiredness from physical exhaustion, but also just like emotional exhaustion, and I think that was a pretty common experience for everyone during COVID. And
I can imagine, yeah.
But the ultra marathon. So I started running, and after I did my first marathon in Rotorua in 2020, October 2020, I said, oh, you know what I can do? I can go to an ultra marathon. The training was more exhausting than the actual race, I would say.
100%.
And it was training during lockdown, so I had to be quite, specific with where I did it and how I did it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but well done you. Well done you. I mean, that's a pretty awesome achievement. 52 kilometers. Yeah, it's amazing. So well done. And then you obviously got your offer. You got accepted, and then you started your Masters of Public Policy with
yes.
Yeah, with the school. And how was that? What is it? I mean, was that a 2-year program, 3-year program, in person, research based? What is, if for someone as naive as me? Yeah.
No, that's fine. It's a 1-year program. It's a taught master's, so it's not a research focused one. So I did do like a project report, but I didn't do a huge dissertation like what I did for my undergrad. And a huge part of that master's was a summer project in which you had to secure a summer project by yourself and carry out work with their organization, and produce some work with them. And that was a key part of it. And the reason why I ended up going with the Oxford program over the Cambridge one was because the Oxford program was a 1-year program, and the Cambridge one was 9 months. And so the Cambridge program had like a project period that was far shorter and more compressed. And I decided I wanted more time for that experience. Yeah.
Sounds awesome. Yeah. It's great to have that choice there. And one of the things I remember when you were doing your masters, on LinkedIn, you put up a post about Jacinda Ardern and her leadership. What promoted you to write that? Because it was a really great article, and I really enjoyed reading it.
Oh, you read it? Oh yeah, you read it.
Yeah, I did read it. Yeah.
Thank you. So I guess first and foremost, I was also doing the strategizing thing where I was trying to build up, I guess, some kind of repertoire of writing examples for myself. So I had a dissertation, but I needed something that was more sort of like academic based, but also geared to the general public, you know.
Yes.
And our program had that. They had a blog and they were inviting people to publish on it. And so I was also looking out for things that I was really interested in. When Jacinda announced her resignation, I thought, here we go, here we go. There's a chance for me to write something about it, and to do a bit of, I guess, critical scoping as to what might happen next with her absence. And so I pitched the article, our communications team, and they said yes, and I wrote it. But yeah, that's the inception.
Yeah,
Nothing too fancy.
But it was really great because it's a really great article, very very well thought out, and I will put it in the show notes and we can read it as well because I think it's a pretty interesting perspective on when a leader leaves, what happens next. And as I said at the start, the country is in a bit of a turmoil at the moment, but it's interesting, when the vacuum happens. And then following your little career journey that's out there in the world to see. The anti-corruption team, tell us about that. The internship with that. What is that like? In Thailand, right?
Oh my! I was just trying to think of the words to describe it because, I mean, that itself was pretty recent. So I feel like I'm still processing it almost. I loved it.
Yeah.
I think if you want my blatant honesty, I loved it. And the unfortunate part of it was that United Nations internships are unpaid.
Yep.
And that's not just for my organization, the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. It was the same for a lot of other UN entities, and that's a huge structural problem that needs to be fixed because you gotta pay your interns. But I wanted the experience, and I was able to. I'm going to be honest. I was able to get by with financial assistance from family, but if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So that lasted for 3 months. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because I was also offered an internship with the World Health Organization when I finished my master's. It was in Copenhagen, and there was no way I could afford it. There was zero way I could afford it in Copenhagen, and I had to say no. I had to say no because there was no way it could be done. And as you said, it's a problem with the institute because you do the hard work, but experience is amazing, but experience doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah. I think there's a saying where it's like, do the mahi, get the treats. But in this case, there was no treats. It was just it was mahi, straight up mahi.
And you pay for the treats, right, as well.
You do. I mean, the fortunate thing was that I was in Thailand, where the cost of living was much lower compared to cities like Paris or Copenhagen. You were saying Copenhagen, but I had friends who were in Paris and who really struggled, or people who were in different parts of Europe. I had classmates who were going to Rwanda, and even the flight tickets themselves cost a bomb. So I was grateful to be in Thailand, and I was working with someone. Her name is Annika, and she was also an alumni of the school, and that's how we got in touch in the first place. I started out by sent out an email, and that's how I started getting in touch with her. I was sending out emails left, right, and center anyway, just seeing what would happen from that. But it was a fantastic experience. I got to do a lot of writing on issues that I cared about. I got to work on countries that I never dreamt of, that I would be working on. So I got to work on Papua New Guinea and Timor-Leste, Mongolia. It was awesome. It was just like a great overview of what was going on anti-corruption work in that space. And I'm actually continuing with that. I haven't updated it on LinkedIn yet because I'm in an awkward space where I'm waiting for like the contract
the formal.
Yeah. But I'm coming on as a consultant with them.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's turned out well. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. Yeah, and I think anti-corruption must be so crazy for you to see because the world is here and there's a world behind it as well, and you would be seeing the behind the scenes and how the world operates.
Very much so, and I think the UN kind of operates as a it can operate as like a monolith entity from other people's views, and often you don't have the chance to see what goes on, behind the scenes, as you say, and it's all people, like they're normal people like you and I, just doing their work and talking to people. So yeah.
And
It's been great.
what is life in Thailand like? I mean, that would be pretty fun as well.
It was
Interesting.
It was amazing. It was amazing. I really enjoyed I guess coming back to Southeast Asia again.
Yes.
The weather was fantastic.
Yeah.
After being in the UK winter for months, the food was fantastic. The cost of living was also a big bonus. I loved it. I got involved in, I did 2 half marathons while I was there.
Oh, wow.
I stayed in hostels, to save on living costs. I was doing what I could to make it work for myself. I networked a bit. I reached out to people. I reached out to people on LinkedIn who were in Thailand and who had like New Zealand connections. So I reached out to people at the New Zealand embassy. I discovered that a colleague from New Zealand police was in Thailand, and he was someone who I used to work with. So I met up with them. I was doing a lot of things apart from just going to the UN building and working.
And I think that's a key thing that's come through this whole conversation is the networking, and you have to leverage your network, right? And you have to go, okay, cool, I have to do this because the world is a small place if you make it small, but it's also a big place if you make it big. But once you network, that bigness becomes really, really small. So why not, right? Why not just use the power of LinkedIn and networking?
Absolutely.
The worst thing someone says no, right? I don't want to see you, Anne. Get away. That's the worst they could say. The worst that someone could say is no. I can't help you.
Oh, yeah. And absolutely. And I think you do need a bit of a thick skin to absorb all of that. And you can't view it as rejection. You can't take it personally. You can only think about the constraints that the people are under, and maybe they've got reasons of their own. They've got their own positions to be in, but you just have to give it a go.
Totally. And now you're back.
The worst is a no or a no response, and that's about it. And I've had plenty of no responses in the past.
Exactly. I think that's important to remember, because it all sounds like everything's hunky dory, but hey, we don't talk about those no's. We don't talk about those hard times where you just get no response or rejection, and it's just part of life. And whatever will happen if you just keep persevering, as long as you don't quit, right?
The one thing I would say is that every rejection always feels fresh. And so I might talk a lot about this mindset that I have, but I mean I'm gonna be real. When a rejection comes, it still hurts. It hurts it hurts like day one. And over time it reduces and it lessens, and then you get the strength to try again for something else. But it's okay to feel upset about it. It's okay to feel pessimistic for a while. I think the more important skill is being able to get back up and trying again.
That's right. Which is the hard bit, right? That's the hard bit, or the more challenging bit. And as if I said to you when you were 17 years old, hey Anne, you're 17 now, in 10 years time you will be back in Malaysia, but during that time you would have worked for the police, done a corporate lawyer job, got a master's from Oxford University, done an anti-corruption team, done all these other cool things here. What would you have said to that 17-year-old if I said that to you?
That's completely normal.
We've been speaking for almost an hour. Can you believe that? When we first started, we were like, we're not going to talk for an hour, but we've done that really well. I mean, there's so much we can delve into, so much we can talk into. I mean, there's your life experiences are pretty amazing. But I think for me, what's really stood out is that you've planned things out, and not that it's always worked out, but it's given you some ideas, but the networking. But Anne, I'm just going to round off the podcast because I know it's a lunchtime there for you in Malaysia as well. It's 1 p.m. Our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge, and every week we ask our guests one question, and it's the same question. And our question for you is, what piece of knowledge would you like us to put into our basket of knowledge, given your experiences? And that could be anything from professional life, personal life, your growth, anything. And you can have two, and you can have two. We'll give you two lessons to put a basket of knowledge.
The question about the knowledge that I want to pass on to the basket.
Pass on. Yes.
I think my my advice is to dream big, but be realistic about how you want to go about achieving it. Because unfortunately, we live in a world where there's too many constraints, and sometimes you have all these magnificent things you want to do, and you want to go out there and scream to the world, "Give me a chance! I just want one person to look at me, to to take me on for the first time." And that's not going to happen until you invest some time into thinking about how you're going to go about it. And look, you might be in a position where you might have more resources than others. You might be in a fortunate position where you might already know someone, or you've got a parent or a friend who can refer you to all these resources. But for a lot of us, we do have to start from scratch with no connections, no nothing. And it's a step-by-step process. But from those steps, you can figure out where you want to be. And that's my biggest takeaway from the past 10 years of my life.
I love that. We hear about this all the time, that you dream big, but break it right down to that first step. And one favorite thing that I like to have is every step is a first step. Every time you take a step, it's the first step. We always talk about that. Every step is a first step, which is really beautiful. It's when, like I said before, when you choose not to take that step, that you're not going anywhere. So that's a fantastic learning. Dream big, but also be realistic. Beautiful. And any last few words before we round off the podcast? Anything that you'd like to add that I might have missed in your amazing story so far?
I think another thing that I was just going to add is that, I talk a lot about what I've done, but I wouldn't have been able to be here without the support of people around me. I wouldn't have been able to be here without the people who have done referrals for me, who have written me letters of recommendations, who have believed in me. My parents. I mean, I couldn't have done half the things that I'm doing now without them. Without their, I guess, their persistent encouragement, even though it was a little strict when I was growing up, or my friends, or the people who I don't know, stood up and believed, stood up for me, believed in me. I have been helped along in so many different ways that I can't even express. And I would say pay it forward. When someone expresses the kind of help, when someone helps you, when they've given you some form of kindness, pay it forward, because you don't know what kind of difference you can make in someone else's life. Really, it might be small for you. You might say, well, just introducing so and so to someone, it's not a big, not a big time commitment. It might mean the world to someone. It might change their lives. You really don't know. So help people if you can.
I love that, pay it forward. And it's a beautiful circle back right to when I started my little monologue at the start, when I spoke about, at these graduations, you see the whole family, the whole whānau. And as you said, this journey you've taken it doesn't happen by yourself. And I think that's important, like you said at the start, we've got to ask for help. But also those around you that are there to help you. They're those that write your reference letters. They're those that do your readings of your legal articles. They're those that jump in and say, hey, when are you going to have lunch? When are you have dinner? Well, let's go. All those little things which do add up. So I love that. And, paying it forward is something that, we should all just do no matter what. It's just, as you said,
absolutely,
one small thing could be a massive thing in someone else's life, which is really beautiful. And which is why I really appreciate you jumping on here, because I jumped on and I said, hey, Anne, jump on, and you didn't hesitate. You're like, cool, let's go on, because I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it, and appreciate your time as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so and this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm pretty humbled and really privileged to hear your story. Before we go, what's your favorite food? We spoke about food being a big theme in your central part of your life. Anything that stands out for you as Anne's favorite go-to food?
I'm going to introduce to you the asam laksa, which is a dish in Malaysia, but there are different versions of it, and so the one that you must always have is a northern style.
The northern style.
Everything else is not as good.
Oh, you heard here,
everyone,
the northern asam laksa. All right, cool. That's it, done. Got to go to Malaysia for that. Beautiful. So much learning here today. So much to take away. So much for myself. I've learned a lot today. For our listeners out there, hopefully you have learned something today. If you haven't learned something again, you haven't listened to this podcast, go back and listen again, because I promise you there's some amazing pieces of knowledge in today's podcast. Thank you, Anne, for jumping on. Thank you for sharing your story. I can't wait to see what else is next for you, because every time I looked at your LinkedIn stuff, I'm like, this is pretty cool. But obviously, this is just a small snapshot of your life. So yeah, keep up the running. That's inspired me to get moving again. So thank you very much. And to our listeners, till next time, don't forget to put something in your basket of knowledge. Till then, keep safe, keep smiling, and said, pay it forward. Ka kite. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.